Today, I want to talk about what the real solutions are to our bills going up. Because on so many fronts, the solution is actually public ownership. So I want to talk about the three narratives that are out there in the press and why we need to recognise that they are false, unhelpful narratives. And I want to talk about the 5 ways that we could actually cut bills. So the bill rises that we're going to be seeing are just absolutely outrageous. So water bills are going to be going up 26%. That's on average £10 more per month per household. Energy bills are going to be going up 6.4%. The price cap will rise by 6.4%. And that means that on average, households are going to be paying £9.25 more a month for their energy. Rail fares already went up in March by 4.6%. Bus fares already went up in January by 50% because the £2 price cap was raised to £3. And our stamps are going up too in April, up to £1.70 for a first class stamp and 87p for a second class stamp, which is 5p and 2p respectively. It's a lot. When you put it all together, it's a lot. There are council tax rises too. Essentially, everybody who can least afford it, all of us are being hit with these massive increases on our essentials, on the very essentials of life, things that we can't do without. So there's 3 narratives that the government wants to put out there and that are out there in the press. And these are that we just all need to consume a little bit less, that the poorest people can get help, and that we need this money for investment. And I take issue with all 3 of these ideas. 3 things. Firstly, this idea that we just need to consume less. We need to consume less water, less energy, etc. Okay, fine. To a degree, people can do some of that stuff. It's good for the environment. However, there really is a limit when people are shivering in their homes and they need heat. There really is a limit to how much water people can not choose to use when they need it. And the fact is that if we want the economy to be boosted, we need people to be taking the bus, getting the train. It would also be great to have people sending things by post and knowing that they could arrive on time and being able to afford to send them. So we need to have people having money in their pockets for the sake of the economy. And this idea of, we all just need to consume a little less in terms of these essentials just doesn't really cut it. The second idea that the poorest people will get help, that is just really not true. For starters, lots of the people who will be hit hardest by these bill increases aren't going to know about the kinds of help they can seek. So the water companies, for example, are saying that they will help out the people who are struggling the most. But many people don't know about that. But even if they do know that they can get some help, how does it help to have only the very poorest people being able to get help? It's not going to help the people who are just a bit less poor and the people above them and the people above them. And the fact is we are all being clobbered with these bill rises that we cannot afford, and it's going to have an impact on everybody's pockets. And it doesn't have to be this way. The third argument that is made is that we essentially just have to put up with these bill increases because we need the money for investment. Well, that would be one thing if money was actually being invested into these services. But what's happening, if you look at all of these services, is that money is flowing out, leaking out of the country, leaking out of our pockets into the pockets of shareholders around the world. And that is the really outrageous thing that is not being discussed in the media, because what we've essentially got are monopoly public services, where we don't really get any control over who is providing them. They're not operating like an efficient market. They are making huge amounts of money at our expense, and they're not actually reinvesting back into the service in the way that they should be. And so for water, that means we see sewage in our rivers and seas. For energy, we don't have the upgrades to the grid that we should have. For the Royal Mail, they want to cut our deliveries. For rail and buses, we're not seeing the services that we should see. We're not getting the investment that we should have because so much money is consistently being wasted on privatisation. It's a privatisation tax. So when you look at your bills that have gone up, you have to think, actually, a big chunk of that is the privatisation tax that you pay, that we all pay, because shareholders have to get their dividends and money has to go to service debt that these companies have in many cases built up. It doesn't have to be that way. So how to cut your bills, our bills, for good? Number one, bring water into public ownership. If you actually hold the companies to account, make them deliver, make them spend our bill money on the investment that they've promised, and essentially push them to the point where they're no longer profitable, and then bring them into public ownership at that point, that is the way to do it. And that would save money that could be invested either in lower bills or in cleaning up sewage. Bring energy into public ownership. So Great British Energy needs a much bigger budget to invest in renewable energy, so that we're not just leaving countries like Norway and Denmark to be doing the renewable energy around our coastlines, but we actually have some UK renewable energy generation. Bring the rest of the national grid and the regional distribution companies into public ownership. Huge amounts of our bills go straight towards servicing these monopolies when we have absolutely no say over the fact that we have to pay them. We have to pay National Grid, we have to pay the regional distribution companies, and we don't get a choice about it. And that is not a normal way to run an energy network. And we could also have a retail wing of Great British Energy set up so that we could choose to buy our energy from a publicly owned energy provider. That is normal in other countries like the US, Italy, Germany, France. And what we saw when wholesale energy prices spiked is that France, because it had publicly owned EDF, was able to limit people's bill rises, while in the UK our bills increased massively. So that's the direction that we need to be going in, actually having a publicly owned energy provider that people can buy from, that protects consumers, that protects households, the public. Norway equally protected the public when energy prices rose because it had a sovereign wealth fund, and so it was able to cap people's bills when the prices rose. And we just don't have that kind of control in this country because we've handed everything away to the private sector. We've said we want to be hands off, let the private sector do it. But the private sector has been failing now in our essential public services, in these natural monopolies. It has been failing for 40 years, and we've seen it again and again. And now we're suffering for it. We're having to pay more on our bills because of this stupidity, this ideology that says that the private sector has to do everything and that we can't look to what other countries are doing, but we have to just carry on regardless with this absolute farce of privatisation. Thirdly, obviously, we can bring the railway into public ownership. Yes, some of the railway is being brought into public ownership. The rail franchises are coming into public hands. However, the government is leaving the most profitable bit of the railway, the rolling stock, the actual trains themselves, in private hands. And those make a huge amount of money. And we could actually reduce rail fares by bringing the rolling stock, the trains, into public ownership, or setting up a new company to make our trains in this country. We need to have public control of buses across the country. It has started in Greater Manchester, West Yorkshire, Liverpool, South Yorkshire are soon to also get publicly controlled buses, in addition to London, whose buses were never taken out of public control because Thatcher knew that that would be a disaster. So we've got a bit of public control coming in. We need public control everywhere so that bus networks can actually be planned for the benefit of passengers. And then we also need publicly owned bus companies because that's how we can really bring those profits back into the services so they can be reinvested into better bus services. And then we can either reduce fares or increase the amount of routes available. And then finally, we need to bring Royal Mail into public ownership. Royal Mail was a 500-year-old successful institution working well in public hands. And since it has been privatised and handed over to now a Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky, it is not working well for the people who use Royal Mail. And we're suffering. We're seeing our deliveries go down. It's getting really unreliable. We're not getting the service that we need. So bring our services into public ownership. That is the best way to reduce our bills. It's really unacceptable, I think, that this government promised to cut our bills for good and is not delivering on that. And they're saying consume differently. It's not that bad. We're going to invest the money. But the fact is, money is flowing out of our pockets directly into the pockets of shareholders around the world. And this government should be defending households in this country, defending our interests. And the best way of doing that would be to take control of these essential services, bring them into public ownership so that all that money can be reinvested either into lower bills, better services, or both. If you agree that Awful April is awful, but it's not inevitable because we need to end privatisation, please do like this video, share this video, but also sign up to our campaign, weownit.org.uk. You can sign up to our newsletter on the website. We are fighting for public ownership of these essential services, and we need you with us to win public ownership, because as long as this carries on, we're just going to see our bills getting ever higher, and we don't have control over these services that should belong to all of us. So we need you in this fight. Thank you.